Hi, it's Daniel from Theology is for Everyone with more insights in Matthew. In chapter 13, Jesus, fresh off of the rejection of the Jewish people, especially the Jewish leaders, Jesus did something that was a shock to everyone, including those who had followed him and worked with him and ministered with him and taught what he taught and did the miracles that he did, the apostles. He began to speak in parables to the people. Now, there are some people who like to say, Jesus used cute parables and he told these stories all the time to help people understand what was going on in these cute illustrations. But that's not the picture that we see in chapter 13. What we see is Jesus has been speaking clearly up until this point, teaching in plain words, not using a lot of illustrations, some analogies and things, but not quite like this, not like these parables. To the fact, or to the point that, like I said, the apostles were shocked, and they came and asked him, "What are you doing? Why are you speaking in parables to the people? This is not normal." And Jesus quoted the prophet Isaiah, and who was lamenting the people's hard hearts and closed ears and blind eyes. And Jesus said, "I'm doing this so that they don't understand." That's different. That's not exactly what we would expect Jesus to say. But I like to look at this as an act of grace, because these were people, on the whole, in general, who were rejecting the truth that they already had, that Jesus had been teaching, the miracles, thousands of miracles that he had been doing. They had been rejecting that. And every bit of new teaching, every bit of new revelation that Jesus gave them was adding to their condemnation as they rejected more. So think of it this way. When Jesus told parables to hide truth, he was actually preventing them from adding more condemnation upon themselves as they continued to reject him. I think that's a pretty cool way to look at it. On the other hand, those people who were accepting him, who were listening, who were following, he said this will give insight into more truth. And so it was sort of a double-edged sword, depending on not the teacher, but the hearer, which is really what the first parable is about. The four soils are the four types of heart, the four types of reception. People who reject completely, people who accept very quickly but don't do anything, people who look like they accept or do accept, but then they just sort of wander away, and those who receive the word of God with a good heart, and then they bear fruit. Now, there's something very specific about these parables that we have to point out. These are about the kingdom of heaven. Pretty much every single one starts off with the kingdom of heaven is like, the kingdom of heaven is like, the kingdom of heaven is like, which means that this is about, wait for it, the kingdom of heaven. Now, there are a lot of teachers and a lot of people over the centuries, not even just today, who like to look at these and say, well, there are a lot of similarities to the church, and so we must really be talking about the church here. And so the kingdom of heaven, this fits in with their doctrine or their theology, that the kingdom of heaven is a spiritual kingdom that is at work or living in the church today. Well, the kingdom of heaven, as I've explained previously, is about the coming messianic kingdom, the millennium from 1,000-year reign that Jesus is going to do still in the future. It's not going on right now. The kingdom of heaven was prophesied in the Hebrew prophets. The church was not. We don't find the church in the Old Testament anywhere, but we find the kingdom all over the place in the Old Testament because it was promised to the nation of Israel. And so these parables are about the kingdom of heaven. And he said that I'm going to show you, or he told the disciples, to you are given the mysteries of the kingdom. And again, some people look at that and say, oh, it's a mystery form of the kingdom, and the church is a mystery form of the kingdom. And again, that's just not true. These are mysteries. These are things that were not prophesied. They were hidden in the past, but Jesus is now revealing about the kingdom. And we can see this, if we were to go through the Old Testament prophets, we would see that they would prophesy about the kingdom, and especially in Isaiah, he seems to blend the kingdom, the messianic kingdom, and the eternal state, the new heavens, the new earth, all of that, into one big thing. Well, it's not until the New Testament that we find out that those are going to be separate things, separate events. But Isaiah didn't know that. But here in chapter 13, Jesus starts to hint and reveal to those who are listening, the apostles then, us today, he reveals to us that the kingdom is going to be hidden, like a pearl of great price, or like a treasure hidden in the field, because it has been, at this point, taken away from that generation of Israel, and it will be given to another one. We can also see a few little things that differentiate the church from the kingdom of heaven. At the end of the church age, Jesus is going to come and gather the church saints to himself in what we call the rapture. But a couple of times here in chapter 13, at the end of the age, angels are going to go out and do a gathering, and they're going to gather wicked people and send them to the lake of fire. So there are two different things that are going on that help us differentiate between the kingdom and the church. Hopefully this has been beneficial to you. Read through chapter 13, read these parables, and notice how many times he says the kingdom of heaven, the kingdom of heaven, the kingdom of heaven, not the church. And then look for a way to show somebody the gospel so that they can be a part of the church and not get caught up in what's going on here in the punishments of chapter 13. See you next time.